All right, the Muslims at this time held Israel, all the middle...
The rise of Islam first.
Do what now?
The rise of Islam. Where did it come from? What happened?
How did it rise?
Well, where did it come from?
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of background of Muslim. This prophet called Mohammed.
What year was this?
Well, he started in the late 500s, early 600s. He died 632 years after Christ. He said that, to give you a little background on the Arabs, said that they came from who? Where did the Arabs originate from?
I don't really know.
Ishmael.
Uh-huh.
Ishmael was who? Isaac's brother, half-brother.
Right.
Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was born of Hagar, a servant of Sarah, Abraham's wife, and she kicked him out. She kicked Sarah out with her son Ishmael, half-brother of Isaac, and that's where the Arabs say their ancestry started. It probably did. Anyway, these Arabs had a guy named Mohammed, and he said that Christ was not who he said he was. Christ is not the Son of God. He was a prophet, sure, but not who he said he was. He's not the Son of God. He's not he's not who he said he was, part of the Trinity. He's just merely a prophet. Well, they said Muhammad, who said he was a prophet, was born, and died 632 years after Christ. He said he's also a prophet. He's a later prophet than Christ. And because of that, because he's a later prophet than Christ, he has a later word from God, and Christ is secondary to Muhammad. Well, when he died, his followers, they believed that, and those Arabs began to fight the tribes around them, and they became more powerful and more powerful. And within 50 years, they had spread a long ways. They had taken several countries, those followers of Muhammad. And when they would take a country, the people there, they converted them to Mohammedan. And how they converted them?
How?
They said, would you like to follow Allah, which is what they call God? They called him Allah, the same God that was Abraham's God, Ishmael's God. They said, you want to follow Allah, or do you want to die? To cut your head off. That's a choice they gave him, or do some other bad thing to him. And so they converted hundreds of thousands of people to Mohammedanism. And within a few years, say about 100 years later, they had spread all down the coast of North Africa, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in Africa. They crossed over the Straits of Gibraltar into Spain. They took most all of Spain, which was then Christian. Christians lived there, had taken over and become Christian. They took nearly all of Spain. They crossed over into France, but they got defeated. Who defeated them?
I don't know.
About 700 years approximately after Christ, when they crossed over into France, a ruler of the Franks called Charlemagne. You ever heard of Charlemagne?
Uh-huh.
Charles the Great. Charles the Great, his Frankish army, heavy-armed Franks, met the Muslims and defeated them and drove back across the Pyrenean Mountains into Spain. Stopped. And when he did that, they were never able to cross into France successfully again. The only thing they could do was raid from the sea. Ship pirates, Muslim, well, we call them pirates, they called them, they didn't call them pirates, they didn't call themselves pirates, but that's what they were actually doing. They would raid these French shipping, even towns in France, go ashore, raid the town, take what they wanted, and sail away. They did it all over southern part of Europe, and even in Italy, and especially in Greece. Eventually, like we said a while ago, when we stopped talking about where the Muslims took Athens, took Constantinople and all that, they raided Christians all over the Mediterranean Sea, and eventually captured and took. They already had Spain. They took Constantinople. They moved north through the Balkan states, all the way to where?
I don't know.
Austria.
Mm-hmm.
Vienna, Austria, capital of Austria, which is was then a German state. It still is. At Vienna, the Christians had gathered a fairly large army. And Poland, the Poles gathered an army and came to the assistance of these armies, a pretty large army, well-equipped soldiers. And this Polish division, the army, came in there and joined these others. They attacked these Muslims and defeated them at Vienna and drove them back down, drove them out of Austria, drove them down into, clean to Hungary. And there was a seesaw fighting from then on for hundreds of years between the Muslims and the Christians, between Austria and Hungary, fighting between Muslims and Christians. And this fighting continued for how long?
I don't know.
How about World War I? World War I, they drove them they drove the Muslims out of the Balkans, out of Greece, into where? Turkey. Mm-hmm. The Turks. Except for one spot. Where was that?
I don't know.
Constantinople. They weren't able, that was so powerful a city they couldn't take it. It had so much earthworks and so many Muslims in there, they were unable to capture it. Still today, they don't call it Constantinople today. What do they call it?
Istanbul.
Istanbul, that's right. And the Muslims renamed it. And so that brings the Muslims up to modern times from the time they took the time of Mohammed. Instead of all of them coming west, part of these Muslims went east. How far? To China. They went to China. Today that's Muslim. India, parts of India are Muslim. Part of still believe in all kind of religions. But the Muslims are very strong in India. All through they're strong Muslim states. Whole states are Muslim.
Well, the rest of the India would be primarily Hindu.
Well, Hindus were powerful then. They were never able to defeat and hold all of India. So today we still have Hindus. You still have Sikhs. You still have a lot of different other powerful groups in India that are not Muslim, even today. But the Muslims are very strong in India. And even in China, in parts of China, they're strong Muslim. Afghanistan, strong Muslim. People live in Afghanistan. And Pakistan, strong Muslim. And in all west of there into Iran, Iraq, all that Muslim, almost 100%, close to 100%. Very few Christians, very few anything else, except Muslims in, say, Iraq, Iran. Those who are not Muslims are even today under strict persecution unless they have protection of, say, American soldiers or some other country, protection, the Muslims persecute them severely, tax them, butcher them, anything they want to do. For a long time, Russia was expanding into that part of the world. Russia was a Christian nation, so-called. Remember I told you the Orthodox Church, and the Russian government allied, became like the Roman government and the Italian government, French government, all these government, Spanish government, allied church and state were one. Russia and those eastern countries, church and state was one with the Orthodox Church, not the Roman Church, the Orthodox Church. And the state governments of those countries like Russia were Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. All those church and state was united with a different church. And because of that, when because Russia became such a powerful nation, when the Russians took began to take these new countries such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, and all that, which the Russians and the British took. Eventually, Russia and British took all of it in that country in there. The Russians allowed their government, their church, to force those Muslims to become Christians or put severe penalties on them, which they did. They did that. The British did not do that. The British didn't force them to become Christians, but they did force them to pay taxes and to not be all the time in rebellion against the English government. If they were, then soldiers in there and put rebellion down.
Let's focus at this time on starting with the history in England and Scotland and Ireland and maybe a little bit of France.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the beginning of the English monarchy after World War.
Okay, England. Let's just start with England. Mm-hmm. Now, why do they call it England?
I don't know.
The Romans didn't call it England. They called it what? Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we call it England?
I don't know.
Because those German tribes that moved in there in England, they had a tribe called the Angels. Ever heard of the Angels?
Mm-hmm.
These Angels were a German tribe. Why did they call them Angels?
I don't know.
Because in Rome, when Roman soldiers went in there and took some prisoners from that tribe, they were blonde-haired people. They were beautiful. They took them and sold them as slaves in Rome. And those Romans looked at them and said, man, they look like angels. That tribe was called the Angels. Okay, well, these angels were a powerful German tribe. And the Angels, Saxons, and Jutes, 3 tribes mainly, and Danes, who come from Denmark, crossed over to England. It was a slow process. They conquered all of England except what? Scotland. Mm-hmm. They couldn't take Scotland. Wales. You know where Wales is? Mm-hmm. It's a little section of England on the west of England. They failed to take Wales and they failed to take Scotland. But the rest of England became subject to these German tribes. And when they did, when these Angels, Saxons, Jutes, they called it Angel Land. More angels than anybody else, they called it Angel Land, England. All right. When they took England, they established all the cities in England where they had German customs. The people, they intermixed with those people that lived there, but they were the rulers. They were the ruling class, and they intermarried with them for hundreds of years. But eventually, those Anglo-Saxons, we call them Anglo-Saxons because the Saxons were a powerful tribe also. Anglos and Saxons were 2 most powerful tribes that settled in England, called Anglo-Saxons. Those Anglo-Saxons ruled. Most of the rulers were Anglo-Saxons, and all of the government was ruled by those people. And so, since England was under their strict control, all the trade and commerce and everything was under their control. And so there was another group of people that decided that that was a wealthy, would be a good, they'd like to be rulers. Who were they?
I don't know.
The Normans in France. Normans. Who were the Normans? What caused them to be called Normans? There's a place in Normandy, in France called Normandy, where our troops landed in World War II. Why were they called Normans?
I don't know.
Because these Northmen out of Norway, Sweden, the North, came in there, conquered that little section of France. These Normans settled there, and decided that they'd rather live in England than they would in France. And they sailed over William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror? William was the leader of them. He sailed with his army over there to England, and when he got there, these Saxons, Anglo-Saxons, gathered an army together, came out to meet him. And what happened?
I don't know.
These Normans, William the Conqueror was a good general. So what he did, he told his Normans, he said, now, we're going to hit their land. When we hit it, when I give the signal, you're going to retreat, like as if you had lost the battle. When you retreat,